Welcome to the webinar on how to impress your boss. I'm Christine Kelly, Director of Career Development, and I'm joined by
Michael Sokoto, Assistant Director of the Career Development Office.
Wonderful. So, what we're going to cover today is a few things that you should know, and that we were just talking that no one ever really thinks to teach you.
Nope.
Some of these things might be things that you already know, but some might be things that you haven't really thought about before. So, the different areas that we're going to cover today are how to manage yourself, how to manage your communication, how to manage your relationships, and how to manage your exit. And so I think when people start a job, they don't really think about how to manage your exit,
Yeah,
but
that's
that's
true.
actually important to think about that because things carry with you from job to job.
Absolutely.
All right. So managing yourself, how do you do that? So here's some things that you want to think about in terms of self-management that can really help you make a strong first impression with your boss. Now, whatever job you have, you're probably going to have an initial probationary period. If you're in higher ed, that's 6 months of probation,
It's a long
a long
probation.
time to act good.
Yeah.
And then in other jobs, it's somewhere in the 60 to 90 day range. But what employers often tell you is during that time, I mean, that's kind of the crucial first steps, and it sets the tone for the rest of your tenure at that organization. And I have actually experienced times when I have seen people not make it through the probationary period. And at that point, you don't even get 2 weeks grace, you're just gone. So you want to make a good impression. So obviously, learn. I think when you think about your job, and this is good for knowing when you are going to get asked questions about what are you going to do with the, what do you see yourself in 5 years? It takes at least, I think, a full year to really understand all of the things you need to know about your job, the intricacies, and get involved. And
Absolutely.
you can speak to that because you've been in yours 2 years. So
Yeah. I would say, it would take 9 months to a year to not only understand your position and know the role that you play within your department, but also the relationships that you're building throughout that first year, understanding who are the playmakers or who are what are the roles that other individuals play. So it's not just spending time and mastering or understanding your position, but understanding the overall functions of the organization that you're going into. And all of that put together will take 9 months to a year.
And there might be other things that you need to learn. So in Michael's case and in my case, when I started doing career development for graduate students, I hadn't done anything exactly like that before. So I had a learning curve, and Michael came from a different career field. And
Yep.
so it takes a while also to learn your job and what you need to do. And there are always differences. And I think even if you take a similar job at a different organization,
Still, yeah.
there's probably different ways that they do things that you have to learn. Other things to think about, obviously, always be curious. Ask about what you can do to advance your skill sets and to meet with more people and to have more opportunities for expanding your connections within the organization. Obviously, being reliable is really important. So
Absolutely.
for the first short term, especially during your on probation, you always want to be in the office a little bit early. A couple of minutes early is good, and you don't leave until everyone else is
Yep.
leaving.
Exactly.
And that's really important. That face time of being seen, like, if you have an hour lunch, you only take an hour for lunch. So being very vigilant on those things. Once you've been there for a while, those rules relax and you get comfortable with knowing how people are in the office. But in the beginning, it's important to do that. Being industrious, so do your work, get things done, and if you finish what your tasks are, ask for more. Be memorable in a good way. So
Yes, absolutely.
by doing things that are helping out other people, and that are showing that you're a committed team player, and then always follow up. So if you make a commitment to do something, do something. If write notes for yourself so that you don't forget. You don't want things to fall through the cracks. And always make sure that you're constantly vigilant about those types of things.
Yeah, that first month with all the acronyms that the organization uses within the organization or even the industry, those notes are going to be extremely important. And following up if you're in a meeting and they are using these abbreviations or certain type of languages that you're not used to just follow up with your supervisor or someone in that meeting or within your organization to really get an understanding of what these acronyms or abbreviations mean.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. When I signed up to UCI, I think they had a 20-page document that
Oh,
was just
oh,
abbreviations. It
it's a
was
lot.
crazy.
That's a lot.
Okay, other things to think about. Obviously, seeking and accepting additional work is good. That's going to help you to move up the food chain. And also to help you increase your skills. So part of what you want to think with any job that you have is, what can I learn? What new skill sets and competencies can I develop in this? And so sometimes taking additional work is a way for you to build in a new area that you don't have. So again, always doing that gap analysis, where are the skill sets that I need. Obviously, work late if needed. Sometimes working later, working weekends, or coming in early falls
Yeah.
into everyone's life, and so you want to be as positive about it as you possibly can. Obviously, showing enthusiasm for your work all the time. Performing, even sometimes when you're the new person, you get the dumb tasks that nobody else wants to do,
Yeah.
but be Johnny on the spot about it, be positive
Be
about it.
enthusiastic
Yeah, there
about
you
it.
go. And complain at home.
Yeah, there you go.
So, and again, the not thinking any work is beneath you. Everybody ends up doing something that's maybe not their favorite. I talk to people all the time who want to go into faculty gigs. And your first couple years as a faculty person is teaching all those basic entry level 101 or general ed classes that nobody else wants to teach. That's going to be your life. At whatever job you go into, there might be some of those things that are the more tedious things and maybe less exciting for you, but everything with a smile and you'll make a great first impression. And this is, I'm going to let Michael speak to this because keeping a journal is really essential.
It definitely is. And keeping a journal, whether it's an actual journal or in the form of an Excel sheet or in a Word document and you're using a chart, it's extremely important to keep track over the work that you've done for many reasons. One of the reasons is, when it comes time for evaluation or after your 30, 60-day review or after your 1 year evaluation, most of the times supervisors or managers will evaluate you based on 2 weeks or a month of work that you've done. And very seldomly will they manage or evaluate you on the work that you've done through that entire year or through the entire 60-day period. So it's important for you to keep track of all of that. That way you have some form of, I would say, some form of evidence of other things that you've done, processes that you've developed, or programs that you've established within the organization. It's not necessarily the role of your manager to know what you're doing every single day because they have their own positions to worry about. So it's definitely up to you to take ownership over your position and keep track over the work that you've done. Here at Reach Out, Claremont Graduate University, as assistant director, I have my own, I would say, type of journal. I use the Word document in a chart, and I divide uh, my chart into several sections depending on how my position is formulated. So there's 4 sections. One is the career coaching and professional development. There's organizational development, program management, and then also collaborative work. So I have an ongoing document that shows examples of how I've done each of these 4 dimensions of my job. So when I sit down with Christine, when it's time for my evaluation, then at least we're able to go through this together and recognize the work that not only I've done, but just the department in general has done.
Well, Michael's point too about your boss not knowing what
Yeah.
you want to do. I mean, we're a small office. There are only 3 of us,
Mm.
but there are days when Michael and I see each other in the morning
Yeah,
and the evening,
that is
and that's
it.
it. Because
That is
we're
it.
both so busy with the things that we have to do that we don't really often have time to see. I don't have time to see what he's doing or to watch that. And same with the other person who works in our office too. So your boss has a whole host of other things to do, and he or she is trying to manage their own life.
Yeah.
So they don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that's why that's important. And the networking piece is really important too, to be able to, again, grow outside of your department where you are, to know other people in the organization. Again, always to look for what those future opportunities might be for you. So maybe where you start isn't where you end up, but if you've built a network within, then you can move around within the organization. And I know that right now, I mean, well, for years it's been, it used to be way, way, way back in the day that
Mm.
you could have one job in the same company for your entire career. That doesn't happen anymore. But I have met people who've worked at the same organization for a long period of time, 20 plus years, but they've had different roles within the organization. So they've
Nice.
moved around with that. So if the organization is of a good size, you might be able to move around and play around, but you always need to be looking for what's next. And then again, the prioritizing tasks of figuring out what your supervisor thinks are the most important tasks and doing those first,
Hmm.
and then balancing things. And you'll notice with any career, there are things that busy times and quiet times. And so thinking about when you can do what. In fact, it's funny because people often think that summertime's a really quiet time in higher ed. If you're
Yeah, no,
faculty, it is, but if you're staff, that's when you do all the work you don't have time to do during the summer. And in
absolutely.
fact, for faculty, they spend the summer doing all the research they can't do during the school year. So kind of think about what you can do and when, and be prepared for those busy times
So,
too.
and also, employers state that they know mostly everything they need to know about a worker after their first month.
Mhm.
The same goes for you as a new employee. You know a bit more about your boss, about your coworkers. So, you know how the organization runs, and you're also starting to get a sense of what can be improved within the organization. So, within that first month is basically a learning curve for everyone. So prioritizing relationships or projects and things like that is extremely important. And meeting those deadlines, like I stated, the first month is extremely important. And if you miss a deadline within the first month, that can really hinder you moving forward.
Yeah. And then these things, I think, again, are those,
Mm.
yeah, we know that, but you still sometimes have to be reminded. So the one about phone calls on a work phone, this could be a challenging one because some employers will, depending on your job, pay for your cell phone for you.
Mm.
If they're paying for it, they might at some point want to know what you're doing with your time, and they might have access to it. And if you're doing any kind of emails on your phone
Yep.
and the like, you have to be really careful about what you're doing if your work is paying for your phone. Obviously, the internet shopping and non-work related Googling, if you need to do that to take a break, do it on your phone or your tablet that belongs to you and doesn't belong to the school.
Yep.
Non-work related documents. So again, those things that we know we shouldn't do, but sometimes
It
we
just happens.
forget.
and
So,
and now that internet shopping and googling is part of our everyday practice as humans,
uh,
it's really hard to manage that, but definitely try your best to manage that
right.
moving forward.
All right. So, managing your communications.
Woohoo.
And this is really important to think about how you interact and communicate and build relationships with your coworkers because in research they've done, they've found that like 99.9% of your problems at work are going to have to do with relationships with your coworkers and not with
Yeah.
your actual job. Like people who hate their job often don't really hate the tasks of their job. They just can't stand the people or the
That they're working
environment.
with.
So, things to think about, and again, things that sound stupid. I once taught a class at an organization where we had what seemed to be a too long discussion of whether or not you should have to say good morning to people when you came in the morning. And
Hmm.
some people who are belligerent thought I shouldn't have to do that, but it's nice. Remember people's names. When you're new, listen more than you talk. So keep a watch. You'll be able to identify who the players are, who the people who get listened to are. So think about that. And we already talked about taking notes and following. And then watch how people interact with other people.
Hmm.
I mean, always play nicely. So it's nicer to err on the side of
Caution, I bet.
caution. Yeah, definitely in terms of especially now, like what jokes people would think are funny or not funny in a workplace setting. And so you need to be very careful about how you interact and communicate with people. And in right now, there's talk about changing greetings. And so, should we shake hands
Mm.
anymore? Or what should we do? So, think about what the protocols are for your office, how people interact with one another, and watch and learn from what you've seen, or even talk to people who've been there longer if they can give you, if there are any kind of secret tips on how people communicate with each other. Again, when you're face to face, avoid controversial topics, which we kind of hit on. Your conversations at work are not confidential, or anything that you talk about with a coworker. They say, "Oh yeah, I won't tell your boss you said that."
Mm-mm.
Don't trust it. So
Yep.
you need to be very careful again. So if you have complaints about coworkers or complaints about your boss, you need to talk about that with people who do not work at the organization because nothing really is confidential.
And you know what? On that note, and as I'm seeing this picture on the bottom right, is when you're a newcomer to the organization, it is not just your supervisor kind of watching out for you, or that's in charge of evaluating you after your 30 or 60-day probation period. It's pretty much every single person within that organization knows that you're a newcomer coming in. So be careful of any conversations that you're having, or anything that you're saying, because you're being, I don't want to say graded, but in many ways you're being graded or judged based on the topics that you're bringing up and the things that you're saying. So keep that in mind
Well,
also.
and a good thing, I don't know
Mm.
if you've experienced this yet, but sometimes when you go into an organization, someone might pull you inside, oh, let me tell you about so and so
Yeah,
and how they are. And then you got somebody else who's like,
don't
oh, let
feed
me tell you
into it.
about. So, yeah, that people trying to pull you into whatever their game happens
Yeah,
to be.
yeah.
And as a new person, you'll never win. So, you need to be Switzerland when you go in
That's right.
and not take sides. And if someone starts to talk about something that's making you uncomfortable, like information that you don't really have a background in or that you don't want to know, it's okay to say, I'm uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
with this kind of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you don't want to actually say it out loud, I have to go because I've got a report
Yeah,
due in
yeah.
5 minutes. So while I'd love to talk, I haven't the
I have
time.
to take off.
So yeah, really being careful about how things go. Email. Everybody uses email now, but there are so many things. And one of the things, I had a conversation with somebody through email, ironically, recently
Mm-hmm.
about our names. Somebody misspelled her name in responding to an email she had sent, and she wanted to know if she should read something into that based on the person. And I was sharing that I have two first names, Christine and Kelly. And I'll get people who will email me and start the email with Dear Kelly. And sometimes even people who know me have met with me before. And I try not to get upset, but it's kind of upsetting when somebody uses the wrong name or
Yeah.
misspells your name. So think about those things and have professional greeting. I don't like it when someone I don't know reaches out to me and says, hey, Christine.
Yeah.
Worse if you say, hey, Kelly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But you need to think about those types of things as well. Make sure you have a good subject line that's going to get someone proofread a bunch of times. You can set your settings so the emails won't go out if they have typos in them. So do that and make sure you check and read. And emails are hard because of the tone. So you need
Yeah.
to think there's some things that are just better to say in person because you can see the person's reaction. You can put the tone into it, and they're not reading into it because sometimes people totally misinterpret what we mean by
Absolutely.
something, and it's hard. And once someone's made that determination, saying you didn't mean it that
Going
way
back
doesn't
is
work.
tough. That's
So
true.
be very careful about those things. And again, making sure that you're sending the email to the correct person. Because there's also, I've gotten a couple emails for someone else that's in the Claremont colleges named Christine. So I always have to send them back. It's like, I think you hit the wrong
Yeah.
Christine.
And know that it is definitely tough to proofread every time, and things like that. I've fallen victim to a lot of this, because as we're typing fast, and we're not necessarily writing a research paper. So a lot of times we don't even think to look back and proofread our work. But it is extremely important, not only in the academia, but also in any industry that you go into, because it showcases a lot of you as an individual, whether you value your time there and whether you're a person that pays attention to detail.
Yeah, and depending on your job, that could be really
Back,
important.
yes.
And it's a professionalism
Yep.
thing as well. So be very careful and check those before you hit send. And your work email's not private, anything that you do. And again, especially if you're doing work emails on your own phone, if someone has a complaint, I mean, your email records are discoverable in any lawsuit that might be brought against you or the organization. So just be very careful that anything that you send out on through your work email, through your whichever you're at, whatever happens to be, is not personal and private. So be very careful
And
about what you're sending.
and sending emails through cell phone, really pay attention to those autocorrects or auto
I
spelling.
know that's
They
sometimes
they give you
really
the wrong
dumb.
word. They give you the wrong word sometimes. So if you're going to proofread, definitely proofread the ones that you're doing over your cell phone.
Yes, excellent advice. Social media, has been increasingly problematic for people. Uh, Anything that you do, they can be tied back to the organization. So obviously, if you're tagging your organization, you need to be very careful of what you're saying. But people have even gotten fired when they are doing things on their personal Facebook, Instagram, Twitter accounts. So you just need to be very careful about how you're using your different social medias and who you're tagging, connecting to. I think it's okay to, like, I have Facebook that's for professional. I don't have a personal Facebook at all. But you could have a professional Facebook and a personal Facebook, a professional Twitter account, a personal Twitter account, professional, all those different things. And so think about that, of what you put out as yourself as a professional in your field and what you want to put out personally, and keep those two separate and don't mix the two.
Yeah.
So your work stuff stays with the people that are your contacts that you work with, that are professionals in your field, and your other stuff is what you do in your out of work life. So if you can keep those two things separate, it's probably going to save you some headaches.
I would say so, definitely. And also err on the side of caution. If you don't want to have two accounts of Twitter or Instagram, just don't share so much of what you do outside of work. I mean, at this point, we're all professionals. You're getting a master's, a PhD, and perhaps a picture, drinking alcohol isn't proper for a person in your type of position in the first place. So just be mindful of what you're posting. Yeah, social media is increasingly becoming very problematic out in the workforce.
And you can't make it go away.
And you cannot.
And as Michael and I were talking about this morning, even if you are one of those people who someone thinks you said or did something awful and they harangue you and it turns out they were wrong, the apology never makes the same rounds as this is a horrible human being who did this nasty thing. So you just have to be very careful.
And Christine, you and I have had countless conversations on how through social media, everyone is an expert on a political topic or on a religious subject, whatever it may be. For all of you listening today, try to scale away from answering or showcasing your opinions with a lot of these topics, because it can lead to a lot of arguments through social media. So be mindful of what topics or you engage with, or what conversations you engage with on social
media. And if
media.
you are an expert in an area and you're making, like, again, keep it, here's the based on evidence and facts.
Yeah, put the link in there. Don't say anything, just share the link.
All right, how to manage relationships. Managing your boss is important, and so it might sound counterintuitive, but you actually need to do this, and things that you should think about. So obviously have clear goals. And so when Michael started here, he gave me what his goals were for the year, so we could kind of talk about what he wanted to accomplish. And then I could share what my goals were for the position too, to make sure that we're on the same page with things. I think always under promise and over deliver. If you think it's going to take you a little longer to do something, give the further date. And when you get it done early, then everyone's all excited. But if you don't get it done on time, thinking about those types of things as well. Let your boss know what you're doing every now and again, because she or he is really busy and doesn't know. And you might have things that you don't want to wait for a year to say, hey, look at this great thing I did. So share those things as well.
Even communication on the time in which perhaps there is a deadline that you're not going to meet within your first 60 days probation. We never know what type of relationship we're going to have with our supervisor, but transparency, I think, in any type of relationship with a supervisor is something that everyone enjoys at some point. So just being transparent and letting them know that you're running a little behind with this type of project, whatever, or report, whatever it may be, and just letting them know in advance. Don't let them know a week before or the day before. Let them know far in advance that the deadline is going to actually be stretched, or if there's any assistance anyone that can assist you to meet those
Mhm.
deadlines.
And I think that talking about your future is important
Mm.
too. And if you have a boss that's really supportive of you, she or he will want to see you succeed. And even if that role is something that's beyond what they can offer to you, but
Absolutely.
if you let them know where you want to go and what you want to do and how you'd like to develop in that role, I think that helps them too to figure out how to manage you and how to give you the kinds of experiences that you want to have so that you can grow in the way that you want to. So definitely talk about that. Obviously, manage your coworkers. So it's always good to try and find a
Mentor.
mentor or two or three or four.
Or everyone. No, yeah, yeah, exactly. Find
But these
multiple.
things about thinking about how you can support other people. Here's a thing I read a number of years ago in a study they did that the second time an idea gets mentioned, it usually gets accepted.
Mm.
So there's a couple things you could do. Like if you have an idea of something you want to do and you're worried about it, find somebody else and say, "Hey, when I say this, can you,
Can
you
you
say,
back it
yeah,
up?
that's great. Let's
Yeah.
do that." Or if there's somebody else's idea that you want to support, and maybe it's getting, like, I don't know, wait a little while, suggest it again. But then if you do that and it gets accepted, make sure you share the credit because it's
To the
really
original
annoying
person.
when you suggested an idea and someone else says, yeah, this is, it suggests it later on and it gets accepted. And then they forget to mention that you were the one who said it first,
Absolutely.
who supported that. But again, thinking about things that you can do to build those relationships. I mean, your coworkers, some of them will end up going to places where you follow them and go work in the future. There'll be people who are going to be in your professional network at some point. So you want to make sure you make good, positive relationships with them and connections for people who might be able to help you advance in your career. And again, for the mentors, people who are a little higher up the promotional chain than you to help you figure out how to make those moves.
And that's a perfect segue to managing your
Managing
exit.
your exit. Yeah, sometimes you have to leave for a variety of reasons. Sometimes you outgrow the job and you just need to go. Sometimes the environment turns out not to be what you wanted, and then it becomes absolutely necessary for you to leave. There's a bunch of different reasons why you might need to leave, and you want to think about the way that you leave is going to have an impact on your relationship with your boss and your coworkers. And so you want to be careful about burning bridges. I mean, maybe you don't care because you thought it was so awful, you didn't like it. But again, you never know when you might run into these people again. So be tactful and considerate in how you express your leaving. Give
Absolutely.
ample notice. I know most people say 2 weeks is plenty of notice, and it really depends on what you're doing. I actually wrote an article you can find in Inside Higher Education. It talks about how to quit your job, and it gives some details on things that you could do and timing. I think, like for me in higher ed and in the environment I'm in, that someone leaving and giving me only 2 weeks notice at some points in the year is pretty traumatic. Somebody
Yeah.
did that to me 2 weeks before,
The
actually a
semester
week
started.
before the beginning of a fall semester. So this person was there for the first week of school and then they were out. And so that left me scrambling. I'd already had program planning. It was just really hard to recoup from some of that. Whereas leavings, if someone leaves in the spring semester, especially at the end of it or in the summer, that's a little easier to recover from than, and so every field has that particular times when it's less than great. And if you have some time, you can transition out of projects, leave a good paper trail behind you. You want to think that these are people that you might want to be able to rely on in the future. So if you leave well,
Oh
then
yeah.
that could come back. I mean, maybe some point your boss is at a different place, remembers their relationship with you and that you did handle it well, and they call you up and want to hire you at the new place. So you never know when you might run into these people again.
Like at my former job at Reach Out, and I don't know if you remember this, Christine, I asked, I think, for 3 or 4 weeks because I was in charge of a lot of projects because of the position I had. I wanted to see through some projects, but also transition some other projects. But also valued all the relationships that I made within that organization. And even till today, here at CGU, I tap into those resources. Some of our students have been able to do internships at that organization, and some individuals from that organization have come out to CGU to do presentations or mock interviews. And I guess in my type of role where relationship building is extremely important, doesn't matter where I leave, I always have to leave on a positive tone, because you never know when you're going to reach out or reach back to those individuals that you used to work with.
Yes, it's a small world.
It is a small world.
All right, so that's the end of our presentation. Here's some other things you can know about us. We have a bunch of videos on YouTube. We do have a CGU Professional Development Facebook page, and we do a lot of things now posting to Instagram as well. You can find more resources on the CDO's page on our portal. And these are some other things that we have for you. Handshake, which you all should know about. If you don't, you need to have a conversation with us about Handshake.
Please schedule a meeting with us.
Big Interview is an online platform that you can use to practice your interviewing skills. And Imagine PhD, you can use this even if you have a master's degree. It has a lot of really good resources for career exploration. We use that a lot and recommend it to students as well. So you can look up those resources. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
And we hope that you learned a lot and that you will interact with us more.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.